like to give a special welcome and shout out to my educational leadership and policy students. I am teaching a class at Cal State Northridge in their doctoral program entitled Post-Secondary Finance and Enrollment Management. And my class is joining us on YouTube today to see how a budget gets discussed by a board budget committee. And then they'll also tune in to watch the whole board next week when they adopt the budget. So a big shout out to ELPS 720 students out there. This is what you've been waiting for.
Welcome to all of you. Alex, is there any technicalities that we need to run through as part of call to order?
That I'm aware of, and we have no public comment that I know of either.
Okay, so now I can entertain a motion to approve the minutes of July 8th.
I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Berlinda. Tammy, would you like to second those?
Second. Okay, only trustees can approve and second. Okay.
That's right.
A second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was kind of like almost a roll call vote. So those are approved unanimously. They're pretty short. So we're going to turn it over to Mike. We're at the planning letters for the board.
Yes. In your packet are two communications from Ide Bailey regarding the scope of the audit for this year, for their annual audit. And they have a legal requirement to give you those. Also, I wanted to update you, the audit is currently going on and they're doing their tests, and it's a remote audit. So that's unique as we're pulling files and sending documents over, but it is progressing. There is a challenge throughout the state of California right now. By law, they have to audit the CARES Act, but the state has yet to issue the audit guide on what to do with the CARES Act. So they have tested expenditures and they have looked at some of the compliance issues that might come up, but they don't have the audit guide yet. They are hopeful they'll get the information they need to complete the audit so they can submit in time, which the latest is January this year. So, but it's an issue throughout the whole state of California. And we'll keep you abreast on how well the audit's going. And hopefully we'll be able to report in December like last year. And then Dr. Anajanis and Mr. Martin can decide the format they want to use with the subcommittee meeting with the auditors. So, and that's all I have on that.
Okay, is this the official pre-audit meeting? Don't we have to have an official meeting pre-audit, or is one of our prior meetings count for that?
I don't believe you have an official pre-audit meeting with them, but you have a post-audit meeting. There was a year where they were doing a fraud across the whole system, and they were doing pre-audit meetings with a couple of trustees, but I'm not aware of them doing that last year or this year. But you will have a post-audit meeting, and it will also, if the board members choose, would be able to meet privately with the auditors like you did last year.
It's always been my understanding that part of the general audit guidelines, I don't know the right word, recommend, dictate, that there should be a pre-audit meeting where the auditors are supposed to ask the committee directly if there's anything in particular that we would like them to focus on.
Okay.
And
I would be happy to reach out to them and find out where they stand on that.
So in their absence here, I just asked the other members if there's something in particular that they would like to communicate to the auditors that we would be of particular interest to us. And the only thing, I'll start it rolling, and the only thing I'll say is that, and I was trying to remember the last post-audit meeting that was focused on the audit. I think we had a few ideas. I don't remember most of them, but I do remember one of them dealt with handling cash at events. And I'll say I'm going to kind of power off that one for a year because I have a feeling that that's not going to be a big problem this year, handling a lot of cash at events. So for me, I can let that one go a year. But just so that we're kind of covering ourselves, to the other members, Tammy and Berlinda, do either of you have anything particular we should be relaying to the auditors that is of concern to you?
I don't.
And neither do I.
Okay, thank you. In some ways, we just virtually covered ourselves, Mike, and I think that's important. Okay, so I don't know that, do we need an action to accept these letters?
I don't know. Do we usually accept communications?
I don't know either.
I
I'm not going to worry about it if you're not going to worry about it.
No.
I will state for the record, the committee's received the letters. And that takes us to item 5, our 311 report. And I guess I'm supposed to look to Chedva to lead that. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there, I'm going to share my screen and give you a few highlights and tell you a little bit about the 311. The first thing I want to start with is that it's a state report. It's kind of like a tax return, but a little different in that it's a standard form where you fill out a lot of different information and the state compiles it and does its thing with it. So it's a compliance form, and it contains 2 types of data, all the data for 1920, the actual data, and it actually includes the budget for 2021, which Mike will be going over a presentation. So I'm not going to cover any of those types of items. So I'm going to see if I could share my screen. And let's see if this goes. Can you guys see my screen here?
Yes.
All
as
right.
you start, yay.
Yay, okay, so that works. So the 311 has, it's 50 pages. So it has a lot of components, and the first component is the analysis of the 50% law. And what it does is it requires you to ensure and report that 50% of our costs in the general unrestricted fund is attributable to instruction. So as you go through this computation on page 4, you'll see, can you see this cursor?
Can you make
You might want to make it bigger.
Sure. Let me blow it up. So the thing that I want to bring to your attention is there's, of course, a numerator and denominator, and it has the different object and instructional codes here. This is instructional activity, and this is instructional and instructional support. And basically we have 53.02%. The requirement is 50%, so we far exceed that. And last year we had 54.22%. So it's heavy in instruction, this report's, anyhow, it states that we meet that obligation.
Mm-hmm.
The next part of this has several pages of what's called the assets and liabilities and equity for each fund. So you'll see each fund, general and restricted fund. And it just itemizes for the next 20 pages or so each fund. And I just want to bring to your attention our total fund equity in the general unrestricted fund, which you'll see again, it's $31 million. So we have it's about 18% of expenses as required. The next page I'm going to go to bring to your attention is they have some detail of income, is the expenditure by instructional activity. This is for the general fund, both restricted and unrestricted. And it's just by program or activity code, and it lists all the income and expenses, salaries, operating expenses by instructional activity. The next page, next set of pages after this is the income and expenses by major object code by fund. And I'll bring to your attention again that the net increase in fund balance was $648,000. This is the general unrestricted fund, which brought our ending fund balance, and it shows again it's $30,357,000. And these are all our ending fund balances for 1920, and just to bring to your attention that they're all positive. And we're doing fine on all of these. You also have, I believe, on a slide, Mike, correct me if it has, you have a slide for all the ending fund balances for 1920, a summary. The other last thing I kind of want to go over is the transfers that we've done. So the general fund contributed to several other funds. For instance, it contributed to the self-insurance fund, $3 million. $2 million was for OPEB, and $1 million was for property and liability. And then these are capital project funds. $5 million we contributed there. And then the last few schedules is just lottery report, and then our EPA money, which we spent on instructional salaries. And the last schedule here is just a summary of all the stirs and purs and the increases in percentages throughout the year. And that's about it. Any questions?
I have a question.
Tammy, go ahead.
On page 34 in the document, tell me about the negative numbers, the Fund 12 restricted. Well, it seems like the budget was quite a bit off from the actual in Fund 12 in total revenues, and in Fund 10 was off by quite a lot too. And then I just, want to know what was the consequence of the budget being so far, so much more optimistic than the actual. And then what is the significance of those two negative numbers for Fund 12 and 10?
The actual is 1920. But the budget is 2021. Does that make sense here? And this is the projected budget for all the funds for the grants. And
Edva, if we could
Yeah.
back up, I believe Trustee Silver answered no to making sense. The budget column is our current year budget. Actuals are last year. So actuals would be last year, 1920. And the budget is what we feel the budget will be current year. So that is the reason there's a difference. Also, the grants we've received are added in to our budget. Plus, when we budget grants, we budget the full amount. but at the end of the year, we only realize what we spent. So, and we defer the rest of the income. So that's why every year your revenue line will drop on your grants, because we can't realize it until we spend it.
Okay,
Does that clear it up?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Hedva.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, good question.
Any
Other
other?
questions? Tammy, did you have any other questions?
Oh, just a little thing. When I was reading, it just caught my eye that there was a redevelopment agency. There was income from a redevelopment agency. And that surprised me because I knew the state of California did away with community redevelopment agencies years ago. And I didn't know that there were any redevelopment agencies that still existed. So it just, as I was reading, it's just like, I wonder where that money is from.
I'd be happy to answer that. The redevelopment agencies are phasing out, but as long as any of the redevelopment agency has any long-term debt, so as they're paying down 30-year bonds for different projects, the money still flows. And then it flows into our general fund taxes. It no longer goes into a special reserve account. In the old days, you put it in a special reserve account and you could use it for projects. But the Attorney General opined that that is actually tax revenue and it offsets a portion.
Thank you.
And we have a seat on the oversight board for the county redevelopment agency.
Okay, other questions? That was a good question. Is there an action required here? Are we supposed to recommend approval to the board?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion that we recommend approval of the 311 to the full board.
So I move approval.
I think we'll go with the motion with Berlinda, second with Tammy. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that passes unanimously. And that brings us then to item 6, which is our adopted budget for 2021. Is this where you want us to, you just sent us something a bit ago, right, Mike? Is this the time?
I did, because I know it's difficult to read numbers on the Zoom. So
Is this the time for us to look at that PowerPoint?
if you wish, or you can follow it along on screen. But
Okay,
I know some trustees prefer to have it ahead of time. Okay, so this is our 2021 proposed budget. And if you recall, the budget was unique this year. One, because of the tax revenue, not knowing what the tax revenues would be. And so the legislature forecasted a budget and the governor forecasted a budget. And originally the governor wanted to balance the budget on 3 prongs: some deferrals, some cuts, and using all the reserve accounts. The legislature, both houses, passed an identical budget that relied heavily on deferrals and the reserve accounts and had no expenditure or program reductions to education. So although there wasn't the conference committee or the Big Five, as some people refer to it, because there wasn't a need to compromise between the 2 houses, what occurred is they met with the governor to try to hammer out a deal. So both sides got things. One of the big issues is, how do you plan for federal relief and preserving the education funding? They came up with a way to prevent cuts to community colleges. However, the governor had his will in that they had to assume there would not be any future federal relief, or as you heard about the HEROES Act. The legislature was very optimistic it would pass. So they came up with deferrals, sizable deferrals of 1.5 billion, with the caveat, if there is federal relief by October, they would relieve that 791 million of that. So they cut it roughly in half. As you probably have heard, there has been no federal relief. And although they keep on negotiating, the deadline has passed. And so even if they do come up with federal relief, we're going to have 1.5 billion in deferrals. The state also provided 120 million block grant to help address the impact of the pandemic. And we'll look at a slide later on that. That's a combination of state funding and federal funding. They both agreed in the end there would be no COLA nor growth funding. Both the governor and the legislature had extending the hold harmless for the student center funding formula to 23-24. There's a temporary reduction in pension costs. The rates were reduced by 2 percentage points each year for last year and this year, or excuse me, current year and the future year. It was accomplished by not buying down the pension liability that was originally proposed. Instead, they redirected that. Buying down the pension liability helps on the long-term debt, helps in the long run, but it doesn't necessarily have immediate relief to the colleges. So they decided to redirect this money to subsidize the rates by 2 percentage points for each year. Also in the legislation is the intent that districts maintain all classified employees, and specifically prohibits districts from laying off custodial, transportation, or child nutrition workers. That's really targeted at our K-12 colleagues, but we do have custodial staff that cannot be laid off this fiscal year. It does provide 15 million Dreamers Incentive Grant. It fully funds Cal Grants. Another big sticking point was the Calbright College. That's Chancellor Oakley's fully online college. The legislature wanted to do away with it, and they ended up keeping it with a 25% reduction, plus reverting all the funds they hadn't spent last year back into the Prop 98. It does fund the Seraphim building. A little bit about deferrals, because we haven't seen them in a while and we've never seen them at this scale. It enables full program funding at colleges despite a 9% reduction in the California Community College funding for 2021. Essentially, they're saying we can go ahead and spend the money, but they're going to give it to us the following fiscal year, and we're able to book that as a receivable. So the deferrals are one-time budget savings for the state, but they have to be ongoing until the state can pay them back. They can cause cash flow issues for districts and will require districts to issue a tax revenue anticipation note. That's a form of borrowing short-term for cash purposes. The deferrals make future program reductions more likely and more profound if they have continuing to cut the budget. The number of months that were being deferred, usually in the old deferrals, we would lose May and June revenue and we'd get it the 1st of July. This scheme, our February apportionment, we will not get until next November, which is 9 months. So essentially we'll get no state apportionment money until after January. We have to borrow the cash from there. And then it works in reverse until you get to June. They'll pay us in July. Most of the finance people across the state find this very peculiar. Usually it's first in, first back, you know. So what the logic of the legislature was, well, we're going to get the money from the feds, so we'll write off those February, March, and April ones, and then you're only going to be doing May and June. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we're going to be looking at a 9 months waiting for some of our cash. In addition, on the deferrals, late follow-up, there was not sufficient cash in the system to pay us our apportionments. So they got permission to take our student equity money and the student equity achievement grant, and they've deferred the entire amount and are giving us that money. So where it looks where we went from 32 million down to $25 million worth of deferrals, we still have the student equity money we have to cover also. So looking at overview of our budget, we have our state apportionment, which is 86.2%, 148 million. We have lottery, state mandated claims, non-resident tuition, which is down about 4 million in our forecast. CalSTRS on behalf of, which is a pass-through, and categorical student fees other. So we have 171.9 million is our budget. And this is our unrestricted general fund budget. Our expenses, salaries and benefits are 89%, which is manageable, but is a significant amount. It takes people to educate people. Then our supplies and materials, operating expenses and services, and those are things like utilities, legal services, capital outlay of 200,000, and other outgoing and transfers to other funds. Okay. So we have a surplus of $95,000, which we have over 350,000 of budget requests for different equity programs. Plus we have some staffing things. So our needs or our requests are outweighing our ability to fill them at this point. Okay, these are our fund balances actual that Heather was referring to during the 311 discussion. And I won't read these to you. Well, I believe what's important, it shows that we're 271 million of an ongoing concern. So we often focus on our general fund, but we have 100 million of other funds that add into this, including 52 million of financial aid for our students. So we're responsible for 271 million. You'll often hear me when we're talking about PCI compliance and other things that we're a $250 million a year operation, and that's where this number comes from. Okay. Fund balances for our adopted. You can see there's a significant increase. We go up to 326 million. That is our capital outlay fund, and it is primarily the Serafian building. It's recognizing that grant that we received, and we've been given the okay to proceed with construction. So it is in the budget. Our capital outlay went up to 41 million in income. During the last budget presentation, Mr. Martin made suggestions about having our budgeted FTE positions. The detail is in the budget document and it breaks it down, but this is a comparison of our FTE. And an FTE is different than a headcount position. So you could have someone that works 20 hours, two people that work 20 hours would be 1 FTE. So as we add up part-time faculty positions, part-time classified, this is full-time equivalent positions. So academic positions, which includes instructors through academic management, went from 499.78 to 480.21. Classified went from 450.8 to 440.8. And this is all funds, not just the unrestricted general fund. And overall, we went from 950.58 to 921.01. We went down roughly 29 positions, and that's through matriculation. And we didn't have layoffs or anything, but just through matriculation. And that's one of the reasons with the fewer number of positions, we were able to balance the budget. Another suggestion we had from Trustee Silver was to create a schedule. And there is a detailed schedule that I won't put up on the screen because it is very detailed and we wouldn't be able to read it. But it's a listing of all our grants and entitlements. So we have our federal grants of 17 million, and we have state, which was our largest one, of 30 million, and some local of just under $500,000 for 48 million in grants and entitlements. It's important to note that this is over other funds than just Fund 3. And it also, Fund 3 contains parking fees, health center fees, instructional equipment carryover, things that are not part of our this schedule. So it's hard to, I'm the type of guy, I get a financial stuff and I'm with my calculator and my pencil and I'm trying to tie things out. It's difficult to tie that last page of our budget presentation back to our fund balances. But HEDVA has the detail if someone really wants to look at it, how it ties out. Another request we had was to discuss the CARES Act. The CARES Act is very complicated because the US government passed the CARES Act and it went through, part of it through the US Department of Education, other parts went directly to states. So the first part we ended up was a grant that was divided 50-50 between direct student aid and institutional expenses. So that's these grants here and here. And we received $7,600,000 for both, and it's on a drawdown basis. So they front us money, we spend money, we put it in, we draw it down. Also, the student aid has to go through Title IV, which is how we give financial aid out at the college, and has to be tracked through that system. We very rapidly gave out $4,218,000 in direct student aid with a balance of $3,396,000 left over at the end of last year. And the idea was we were going to reserve some money for this fiscal year for the second wave of the pandemic, that it seemed like the first wave never ended, but in order to have direct aid to our students. The next part was the institutional portion. And we only spent $673,000 because we were trying to figure out what we were going to do, but a lot of it was canceled fees. So we had fees for travel with our students and our faculty, and we were able to, when we canceled, to charge the money we lost to the CARES Act. Then we have student-related refunds, whether that's fees for classes or parking or health. Whatever fee we were refunding, we were able to charge here. And then we also received a Hispanic serving augmentation because we're a Hispanic serving district, and that follows the rules of the institutional portion. The state came up with the COVID-19 block grant that I had mentioned earlier. The COVID-19 block grant is divided between a federal block grant that must be spent by 12/30/2020. That's coming up soon. And the state, which does not have to be spent until 6/30/22. So let's look what we have budgeted for this year.
May I
Yes,
ask a question? How is the CARES Act Hispanic serving money intended to be spent?
the same as the institutional is what the rules say. Because we're a Hispanic serving institution, we get an augmentation of our institutional portions. So instead of 7,600,000, we got 8,600,000.
So can you, because the only things I can think of are what are on here, the computers. So what might be things that we would spend them on?
Okay, if I could turn the page. This is our current budget plan for CARES. We're going to give out the remainder of our direct student aid this year. And working with Manuel and Financial Aid, Dr. Olivo to come up with the plan on what we're going to do here. We do have many students with food insecurities, and we're trying to see how we can use this money, but it has to flow through Title IV. So we're looking at different things we can do. We plan on spending 12,000 in PPEs. That's masks, hand sanitizers, things like that. 405,000 in computers. And these computers are for, if you look at the bottom, it says for students/staff. And then the orange is just students. So we plan on having some more parking refunds. We plan on and tuition refunds, student software. We have COVID testing and symptom tracking. And you can see it's just not for the institutional portion. It's over here in the part we need to spend by December. When we test all staff that come on campus at least once a month, it's $188 every time we test. So it adds up. Plus we have a software system on a mobile app where it sends me an email in the morning. Are you coming to campus? And I say yes. Then I have to answer questions about my personal symptoms and whether I'm cleared or not to come on campus. Then I get an email response, I'm cleared, or an email response saying contact HR. If I get an email response that I'm cleared, I forward that email to my supervisor. So that's how we're monitoring who is going to be on campus and whether or not they're safe to be on campus. And it's, self-reporting on our system. And if you get an email that says contact HR, we have specialists in HR to work with the employees. Okay. We're going to have some more PPE supplies. We're going to have a significant expenditure, 2.5 million in faculty training. So we had some training over the summer on how to teach online. And then we also have stipends for converting classes from face-to-face to online formats. We have more software. And then here we're reserving $1 million for technology out of the HSI CARES portion. We know we're looking for ways to bring students partially back on campus, setting up labs for them. We also do not know to what extent our new students' needs will be for technology. And we have a lending library, so we want to be set to make sure that digital divide does not impair a student's learning. And we're monitoring it. We'll see if we can use those funds for something else. But right now, that is the plan. You can see we've fully expended the federal part of the block grant. And we're reserving this block grant for next year. Okay. Is there any questions?
Oh, Berlinda and Tammy.
I have
Okay,
one
let's
quick
go,
question.
Berlinda.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Bush, thank you for a wonderful presentation, very thorough, very clear. The only question that I have is what would you attribute that surplus on the ending budget? I mean, what are some of the things why we led to a surplus of 95, I think is $1,000?
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
explain that, please?
Well, we didn't plug a hole. Sometimes budget people will say, I'll spend an extra 90,000 in supplies. It literally, after we did all the math of the 171 million, there was 90,000 that fell to the bottom of the floor. And the reason I elected to do that is because there is so much need. You know, not one resource request was funded this year. Some of the safety nets that departments had for surprises, you know, they'd have a little extra funds in case something came up. Those were taken out of the budget. We looked at all vacant positions, and their executive cabinet had discussions about which vacant positions we wouldn't fill this year. That's one of the reasons you saw the FTE go down. So I wanted to be more transparent that there's, you know, a little bit of money left over. I do know that Dr. Androgenis has many requests for that $90,000. And we will see what we will do with them. We have some outstanding requests for equity issues to help the college become anti-racist on our journey. But I believe those requests alone are pushing 300,000 right now.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. I was just thinking, and I did notice that we had a lot of changes. Maybe it's part that we don't have that many folks on campus anymore as well. That's what I was thinking, but I just wanted some clarification. Thank you.
Did you have other questions, Berlinda?
No, I don't.
Okay, Tammy.
Yeah, I'm back on the $1 million for the Hispanic, as a Hispanic serving institution. And is that the best support for our Hispanic students to buy technology? How was that determined that was the best support for those students?
It's somewhat confusing, but when you read the language, it is not support for the students. Then it would be over in this area. It is support for the college. So it is designed for the college so that the college has adequate, all of this stuff, whether it's faculty training, whether it's PPE supplies, technology. So it may be that we need student hotspots. You can see we spent 66,000 already on student hotspots. So, but it's so we can close the digital divide of those students. So we can make sure we have the PPEs we need for those students.
Can I just add a clarification that we were eligible for this money because we are a Hispanic serving institution and we have HSI grants. And so it may look like it's a grant that we're supposed to utilize to only help a particular student population. And that's actually not the case. It's money that goes to the institution to help all students, but it comes through a particular funding stream.
Thank
So
you.
it's an institution level help. It's like our the HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution grant that we just got about a month and a half ago. It is it's a project that is designed using this funding stream, but it is to help all students.
Okay. I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It is confusing. It's very confusing.
I guess that to just keep going then, even on an institutional wide, I don't see any funding for mental health or other things. It's all technology. And are there other ways to spend this money that might, take a portion of it that is not on here?
Right. Well, I believe we have what the funds really are intended for. They're for direct aid to students, and then they are to assist the college to transition, pivot very rapidly from face-to-face brick and mortar modality to an online modality. And then in doing that, making sure we're bridging the digital divide for both faculty and students. Because we have faculty members who didn't have the right devices and we had to check them out, equipment. Additionally, we can clean up the campus, sanitize the campus so it's safe.
And can I offer Trustee Martin, if it's okay, Dr. Olivo could speak to what we are providing and how we are providing the mental health services. Dr. Olivo?
Hi, thank you, Trustee Silver, for asking the question. You're right, mental health is a priority need for our students, and we're able to respond to that need through a couple of funding sources. One is our student health fee funds. Every student pays health fees. That helps to provide a budget to sustain our mental health services. Second, we also have student equity and achievement funds that helps to provide a therapist for our students in our Black Student Success programs. And then finally, we also have a mental health grant that we were awarded from the Chancellor's Office. And these funds help us provide robust services for mental health support for our students.
And if I can,
any other trustee questions?
Can I just want to add one more comment on the technology push that we have received, and we've seen research in the last few days that shows that across California, 25% of K through 12 students, K through 14, I should say, so that includes us, do not have access to reliable or any internet. And so one of the reasons that we do have to focus so much on technology is that we know those people.
Not me.
So can I ask, would that mean that we would pay for maybe a year's worth of broadband service for the home where these students live?
Well, we're not doing that. What we're doing is giving a hotspot for 6 months, and so it's enough for the student with enough bandwidth, but it's not broadband for the whole household. So you can see where we spent, and this was new for the fall when it came out as an issue. And part of the problem is being able to react to the students quickly. So we put in a Wi-Fi parking lot. We're looking at opening up study room space on campus, but we had students that needed hotspots. So we purchased 66,000 worth of hotspots, and they have 6 months on them. And afterwards, the students can reload more if they'd like. They keep the device, and then, or if we're looking at a new round of grants and they've registered for the next semester, we can upload more months on it.
And have you asked the students if these hotspots are powerful enough that they are able to be well connected to their classes?
We have gotten some preliminary data that it's good enough, but it is not good enough for the whole household. So if someone's have siblings doing online also, it's not enough bandwidth for the whole household. So that is challenging, but our our emphasis in this grant was to take care of the student who's enrolled at PCC. And we work with our colleagues in K-12 as they're also struggling with the bandwidth issues for households. This is relatively new, but it's better than what it was when people were parking outside of fast food restaurants, like a Taco Bell, trying to get online. It's more robust than that.
And we have parking lot 3.
Yes, we did a parking lot 3 that's open all day. It is, I'm the first to say, it's miserable in the heat. Even one day we opened up the parking garage, which has poor connectivity in it, but just to get people out of the heat. Candace Jones and Darlene Inda are working on setting up a study hall in Krevling, and they've ordered the plexiglass and the devices to set up a study hall, and then we'll use the EOC as a computer lab. And the reason we like that building is it's scalable. So we think we can handle 50 students at a time. And we have online registration things for like counseling appointments that we'll be able to use for this. And I believe the program is called Starfish. And then they'll be able to, the student can register and say, I need 2 hours in the study hall, or I need 2 hours in the lab. And then they check in at a time, and we have lab techs that can staff these, and we can make sure they do the app online to do this self-evaluation. And once they show they're cleared, we can let them in. So we haven't yet done that, but we've ordered everything we need to do it, and then we'll see how that works. If it turns out we need 100 students or 200 students, then we have the piazza downstairs we can expand into and then shrink back. And we do not have to add more Wi-Fi to that building. A lot of the buildings we looked at didn't have sufficient or robust enough Wi-Fi to handle that number of people.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mark, you need to unmute yourself, of course.
Yes, I had a couple questions. I was wondering about the FTE positions, the drop in FTE positions.
Yes.
Especially for faculty. Do you have any indication of where those positions are? Are those mainly adjunct or?
Both.
Both?
Both.
Both full-time and adjunct?
Yeah. Yes.
And my other question was, what is there anything in the budget for faculty tech issues?
Yes, if I can go back up. Oh, I'm sorry. Operator area, you need vice president tech issues too. Right here, if you see at the bottom, it says for students and staff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's math, clinical learning, etc. So this includes the faculty, computers. Also, and I'm assuming when you say tech issues, you mean like hardware?
It could be hardware, or could be connectivity issues. Some of these people live way up in the mountains.
Yeah. Well, one of the issues that we have with some of the connectivity issues for faculty is faculty also have offices on campus and can come to campus and use their device on campus. And we do have some faculty that do that. So we haven't purchased any connectivity for faculty or staff.
Okay, thank you.
purchased hardware. We've gotten people laptops, Chromebooks, some specialty laptops, depending on what they're teaching. And then we've had a lot of software. And I'm sure as you're aware, there's still an issue with proctoring software that the deans are looking at, and we'll be purchasing that also. And then, you know, the faculty did an unbelievable job of pivoting. And
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Like the whole college, but the faculty led the way. And I mean, you showed up and we said, hey, surprise, 2 days you're online. And people who have never taught online said, what do you mean? And
Yeah.
They tried, they made mistakes, they pushed forward, they never gave up and just kept on rolling. And so we're also, as you know, there was a large need for training. So I've spent a lot, 2.5 million in faculty training stipends.
And conversion.
Yes, and conversion.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, and I have been warned by Dr. Juni, there's more training coming. So yeah, so in short, our push on faculty was a computer device to use, as well as building the skills and the capacity.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just respond to the question about the reduction in FTE, part of it is that, as you know, we were in the process of hiring anywhere between 17 and 25 new faculty based on our faculty obligation number. And one of the first things the Chancellor's office did in March, early April, was basically say, we're reducing your FON. And so at that, we locked in at the 8 we had hired. But people still retired from the institution. And so that drop is, you wouldn't have seen it if we hadn't had that shift in our faculty obligation number. We also have had clerical and administrative folks leave, and we have not replaced them. And so that is a mixture. That's largely a mixture of just, we stopped hiring.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Yeah, I have a question. I'm interested to find out item 7, finance update, and how that differs from what we just heard. So let's go to item 7.
Stop sharing.
I think we need I'm sorry, we need a recommendation to the full board.
Oh, okay. So is there a motion to recommend the adopted budget as presented to the full board?
Yes, I move that we accept this.
Is there a
and
second?
forward it to the entire board.
I second it.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, there you go. It's official. So now item 7, what is finance update?
Well, this is a fancy way of me asking for additional meetings. We need to do a tax revenue anticipation note, and we need to have the funds in February. We have focused in on the state pool out of the treasurer's office, and a couple of the reasons why we're focusing on that pool, besides the cost, because it's a larger pool, the treasurer's office subsidized some of the cost. Our bond counsel is also bond counsel for that trend. And also they use Eide Bailey, who's our auditing firm, to do the cash flow projections. So we're dealing with people that we know. The TRAN will be can legally be for no more than 25 million, the amount that was deferred. However, our cash flow projections will limit that because we're in good shape. So we won't need to borrow the full 25 million. However, that we're going to get a resolution that will need to be passed in either November or December. I've asked to do it in November, but I don't have it yet. And it'll be a not to exceed resolution. And then the actual financing documents that the board would vote on would have the correct amount in it of exactly what we're entitled to borrow. The second thing that's we need to address is the Serapian building. We have our state grant, but as you know, we have a 20% matching, plus there's part of the building that the state will not pay for. So we're going to need to do a COP. And so I'm kind of bringing back that discussion we had before about different types of COPs. And I'm going to need to schedule a meeting with this group and that with the finance team about a COP and the schedule. We would like to also get that money somewhere around February. We are currently on the street bidding the demolition, and then we have internal funds to handle the demolition part, but the construction part, we're going to need to have the extra funding. And Mr. Martin, you may recall there was that one instrument that was interest-free or didn't have payments for 2 years, and then we had to start paying in the third year. That at the time the committee was interested in, but we need to get all new numbers, have the banker come and present, have bond counsel look at it, and make sure it's the right fit for the district. So both of these will be occurring, and I know it is the holiday season coming up, but I'm going to be requesting a couple more finance meetings so we can approve these documents. And as you recall from refinancing the bond, these are pretty robust documents, and we will have bond counsel here to walk everyone through, but they are long and complex documents that she will help us digest.
So this was a warning.
You can view it as a warning, but it's also asking, please, can we have more meetings?
Okay, well, we're going to
we
get to
don't
that.
say
I see down here pretty soon.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be the conclusion of item 7 then.
Yes.
And then thank you for that. And then item 8 then is our PARS investments, and I appreciate that you sent out the update. It more or less speaks for itself.
Yes.
I was really pleased to see the returns, knowing that we're in a rather conservative fund.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty nice returns for a conservative fund. Remind me, I don't remember our equity fixed income ratio in our particular fund. Do you happen to know that offhand?
I do not. Hedva, do you know
Okay.
the equity fixed income ratio?
That's fine. We can get it another time.
Not offhand.
Okay, it's okay. I know we're in about almost the most conservative one, and to see that kind of long-term return is pretty impressive. So, and it certainly beats what we would have been doing at the county.
Oh, yes.
So is there any other questions on the investment report we were sent by the members? Okay, maybe you can just sometime next time look it up and remind me what the mix is on that. I should
Will do.
Okay, so now we're then at item 9, which is the meeting schedule you had suggested. You outline our meetings here below. I would have said November 4th is our next meeting, but it sounds like that's not soon enough. You want one sooner, Mike? Yes?
No, November 4th would be fine.
Okay.
So that could that be combined with the
So does
311?
November 4th work? Yeah. So that all works for everyone? Okay, item 10, proposed future agenda items. Okay, I don't see any. So I will say, and I didn't comment, but I too appreciate the budget presentation. It's always difficult to find the Goldilocks of making sure we understand what's happening and not drowning us in detail. Sometimes the easiest way to hide things is give people so many numbers they can't see anything. So I think this was a really wonderful presentation. I think it did a very nice job. I'll say it hit the Goldilocks target of helping me understand what really is going on, and I appreciate a lot of the backup as some of the other members have expressed. So I think you're sitting good to go to board next week. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end. It's nice seeing people again, different people than the people I see every day, which seems to be a very small number of people, though I fortuitously will say they are my favorite people. But it's nice to see other friends and colleagues as well. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you all for attending. Alex, I'll turn the leave button over to you, and we'll see everybody again in a week.
Thank you, Trustee Martin. Thank you, Trustee Silver, and thank you, Rockstar full team there, Mike and Hedva. Thank you very much. And Berlinda Brown.